Hi people. But every time I go on Zoom, I get a warning from my security software that they've just blocked another malicious attack. So this is for my private channel. Well, it's not exactly private, but will be shared with only a few. And it's my version of counselling because I'm hyper vigilant intellectually. I know more than most counsellors that get allocated to me. I don't mean that arrogantly. So I want to talk about trauma bonding and the history of the curse of Rainbow Farm and how to reverse it. I've shared quite a bit of this publicly on my Facebook, Angela Teresa Power Disney. Until they mute that, well, please God they won't. But I don't like washing family laundry in public. I don't enjoy it. But I've been so isolated by my abusive siblings and parents that I have more support on my Facebook than I do in real life. So by going public with the latest family drama, I've had fellow survivors or subscribers or supporters just literally hold me up until I can stop being a victim and contact safeguarding and take a stand against sibling abuse and bullying and elder abuse and all that stuff. So I have to fight off every time I get brave and do a public video or a Facebook post. I have to fight off what I used to call Catholic shame, which is you don't wash your dirty laundry in public, like you don't blow the whistle on your own family, you keep it all secret and take it up a level. It's like you don't disgrace the church because, let's keep it in-house and then we won't, so it's this thing of feeling like a grass. And I've been following a lot. In fact, a video I feel I need to do publicly is Steve Wraith Wears a Penny, about Freemasonry and about crime families like Paddy Conroy, like historical villains redefining what it is to be a grass. And I've always said, to grass a nonce is not grassing. And Matt Taylor is absolutely on a winner when he says that James Hind saying he came across a paedophile distributing the highest level of child pornography, but he didn't feel to report that to the police because he didn't want it on his conscience to ruin a paedophile's life in Kent. And this is the kind of person saying they want to go and join the Foreign Legion and be around vulnerable children in the Ukraine. So I just want to say that yes, I'm hugely embarrassed at washing my family's dirty linen in public on Facebook. Yet I know if I didn't go public with decades of injustice and bullying, both parental abuse and sibling abuse, I wouldn't have been supported as I have. And the prayers, I can feel them. I can actually feel being upheld by prayer. But the practical help as well. Like I would not still be online if it were not for my subscribers bringing their skills to the table, whether it's research, whether it's courage, whether it's experience, whether it's righteous anger, whether it's spiritual guidance. like no man is an island. And when I became a member of Talk New York, I said, because I've always tried to work alone and not join groups, I said, I've realised that without a covering, we won't make it in such times as this. We'll be taken out either by self-sabotage or other means. So I guess I just want to give a potted history, and this is like the play, the movie, the field. John B. Keane, I think, was the author. When I lived in Ireland on and off since 1981, when my father finally came home to Ireland, and I directed some actors in a play, Mockra and Fermo, you call it. It's called The Young Farmers, and I can't remember what the play was called, but it came second nationally, and my lead actor, Sean Lydon, got the National Best Actor Award. And I can't remember the relevant. Like they were so shocked at me. Like I'd done a degree in English and theatre, and then switched to English and American literature, and then postgrad in journalism. But whatever, I brought a certain discipline. I used to rehearse in the Vincent de Paul place, and like I used to go crazy if they were late, and they were like, "We're bringing in the silage, like we had to bring in the hay," and like whatever. And I just used to say, "Look, I'm not doing this. If you guys don't take this seriously, I'm not doing this anyway." Sean Lydon got Best Actor, the whole of Ireland, Mockra and Fermo, and the play itself got second prize nationally, and they brought me some beautiful Dooley pottery to thank me for directing that play, and it was a privilege. But it feels like that, the curse of Rainbow Farm, and how to reverse it. So I'll try and keep this brief, and I probably might go public with it. So after my marriage broke up, and a few years after I left my Disney marriage, I had a relationship with a local, I won't say his name, like, I don't want to embarrass people. But anyway, he told me that the person that owned Rainbow Farm before my father bought it was called Charlie White. And he told me that as a youngster and Republican and during the Troubles, that he had sat in Charlie White's hay barn, the same hay barn that is painted now by Chuck O'Connor. This boyfriend of a year and a half told me that he'd sat in Charlie White's hay barn and been taught how to make bombs. I know, again, I'll try and avoid names. I'm willing to go dark on naming people in exchange, just for a while, because it's history. You can't eradicate history. And they say the best way to get truth out is through fiction. And like, if I get an editor, I can just say to them, change every name, and put that disclaimer that says any similarities to real life characters are coincidental, and this is fiction. Or I named it Faction when I was at university, because it's facts, it's fiction based on facts, just to keep yourself from being whatever, sued or whatever. So anyway, so that's what I heard about Charlie White, was that he would have youngsters and teach them how to make bombs during the Troubles. I also heard he had an addiction issue, and he drank his fortune away. And there are stories locally of landowners that would actually gamble their fortune away. They would actually give the deeds to 65-acre small holdings, which were doled out by the invaders. I'm so conflicted about this because I'm half Irish, half English, half Catholic, half Protestant, half Republican, half, the modern IRA was a complete invention in collusion with MI6. And Sinn Féin is a disgrace to me today in 2022. George Soros paid, advocating every kind of wickedness and still trying to be the people's voice. I hope I'm loud enough, but let's stay focused. I've turned the volume up. I hope one of my subscribers said they couldn't hear. I've turned it up full. So Charlie White sold a 65-acre small holding to my father in 1981, or 1980, 81. For peanuts. I think it was, just peanuts, because he was so in debt. And I have heard stories of people gambling away the deeds to their farm at a poker game, thinking that one more spin of the dice might get them out of a hole. But even the way my father bought it, he'd left my mother and I running, like my dad did 25 years in the Air Force. And then he bought a derelict listed building in Bradford-on-Avon. And, you get a payout when you leave the Air Force after 25 years. The great Aunt Lizzie lent some money. And so he restored this derelict listed building to create a 150-seater restaurant and bar and living accommodation. It was 3 or 4. Yeah, it was like the bar and snug was on the ground floor. The 150-seater restaurant was on the first floor, and our living accommodation was on the second floor. And I think there was a basement. So anyway, it's now called the Dandelion in Bradford-on-Avon, and no doubt Sarah Phillimore, solicitor, very fond of assisting social services in stealing children, allegedly. No doubt she's been there many a time. But it was my father and mother that bought that. But what my dad went through a thing in his 40s of he had at least 5 affairs. He went through a midlife crisis, although he probably had affairs all his life. But to my knowledge and my mum's knowledge, he kept having affairs with waitresses and horsey contacts and whatever. And so my mum got brave and she left him for 11 months. And she just wanted to get free, and fair play to her. She got sober. She took her driving lessons again, even though she'd had a license. She got a fantastic job with the civil service. She started going back to the opera and things that she loved from her culture. And even though my dad was having affairs left, right and centre, he was not happy about that. So when he decided to sell the restaurant and retire to Ireland, he did a very horrible thing. Because my mum had been brave enough to leave him once, even though she got handed back after 11 months, stalked back. When he decided to move to Ireland in cahoots with Anne-Marie the baby and Sharon, who had alopecia, her hair was falling out with the pure stress of my mum being gone and my dad raising the younger ones. What my dad did was, when he bought Rainbow Farm, he didn't acknowledge being married. He put the deeds into his name, Nicholas Power, Shandon Lodge, Dungarvan, County Waterford. My mother didn't find this out for decades. the only way she found it out was when I was looking after her, and she went to the solicitor and said, how could Nico sign the farm over to Phil and Emery without my signature? And then she found out she'd never been on the deeds, of Rainbow Farm. So there's a saying in the Bible, and Don Francisco, the singer, made it famous, which is, if you build on a crooked cornerstone, how are you going to make it stand? So right there, my father buying a property and making sure his wife of, whatever, was nowhere mentioned. And then he used Anne-Marie, even for him to buy the farm. He still was short a few quid. And by this time, my mum, when Dad and Anne-Marie said, oh, we're emigrating to Ireland, and Sharon, I think we were going to take Sharon, even though she was already having her hair fall out with stress. Mum said, no, I've got, my dad only gave her 11,000, I think it was, out of, a restaurant that back in the 70s sold for 70 grand and then eventually 1.4 million. And then just go Google the Dandelion in Bradford-on-Avon and value it now. It's worth millions, right? But my mum only got 11 grand, but she was delighted. When you're a victim, you just want freedom. And so she bought a little house on a little estate in Bradford-on-Avon. And she said to Dad, I wish she hadn't relinquished Anne-Marie and Sharon, but she did. He was a bully, and if she tried to have the children, he would have destroyed her even more. But she said, no, you go on ahead and emigrate to Ireland with horses and dogs and fortunes, and I'll just try and live my life peacefully in Bradford-on-Avon. But then my dad got Anne-Marie to ring my mum and say, Mum, I think she said something like, we're a few thousand short to buy this farm, and it's definitely meant to be ours, because every time we go and see it, there's a rainbow, and every time we come across on the ferry, it's somebody like Jill Bishard, who my dad is shacking up with, but let's not address that. But every time Anne-Marie was used to say, every time we come to view it, there's a rainbow. So my foolish mum said, all right, I'll give you another chance. I'll sell my little modest 2 or 3 bedroom semi-detached house in Bradford-on-Avon, and I'll come to Ireland. And my mum, she made it this is back in 1980, 81. She made 6 grand clear profit on her little house that she'd only been in for a year. After she, whatever, she made 6 grand, which in 1981 was not small change. And she transferred it to a bank account she'd opened in the Bank of Ireland in Oldcastle. But strangely, my mum, having been the victim of financial abuse all her life from my father, she was quite clever at squirreling up little secret money, So she, on a visit to them, she had opened her own Bank of Ireland account. But when she transferred the profit from her little house in Bradford-on-Avon to help Anne-Marie and Dad buy the farm, not knowing that her name wouldn't even be on the deeds, somehow Bank of Ireland Oldcastle put it into my dad's account. And when my mum found that out and contacted them and said, I've just transferred my own personal funds from my own personal property and you've put it in my husband's account, they said, oh, sorry, it was an administrative error. You can fact check me. You can, it's true. Right? So that's the kind of background. Charlie White drank the fortune away, sold it for peanuts. Dad lied to my mum by not putting her on the deeds. He used Anne-Marie to groom my mother into selling up and coming back to an abusive relationship. And then during the decades, my mum inherited a couple of times, once from her mother, once from her godmother, and both times she put all her inheritance into Rainbow Farm or the bungalow over the road, Scholars Rest. And my dad would literally, for as long as my mum had an inheritance, he would say, "Oh, I forgot my checkbook. You pay for this, and I'll give it to you later." And like, no, the financial abuse was huge. So even antiques like the Symphonium that was sold at Sotheby's went to pay for Sharon's house to get tarmacked or landscaped, or my English nana's inheritance went to put central heating into the farm and an extension. It's just had a very unhappy history. Then my sister, who was supposed to be, first of all, my father told 5 daughters, he worked us since we were 8 years old. We worked since we were 8. We came back from Gibraltar, and my dad, even though he was like, he was earning well enough, but he would do things like take on extra jobs, easy fit covers for couches. People from the 70s will remember that, 60s and 70s. At 8, 9 and 10, myself and my 2 older sisters, we'd be dropped off at estates with 1,000 leaflets for easy fit covers and instructed to deliver one to each door. Or, at 11, 12, 13, we would be taken to clean offices for Acme Cleaning Company in Bradford-on-Avon or whatever, and work till midnight cleaning offices. Or my mother would be, made to be a Sarah Coventry rep, or like we literally worked it was child slavery. And my father, and then even then when we had the restaurant, like at 12 I got a job, 4 hours on a Saturday morning, 4 hours on a Sunday morning in Melksham in Wiltshire, and it was cleaning a pub and 12 B&B rooms for something like two shillings an hour or something pathetic. But I just, if I said to my dad, I want makeup or I want, whatever, money to go, I don't know, whatever, no, that wasn't an option. So I got a job for 2 shillings an hour. And then we got the restaurant. So then, there's your child labour opportunity. And when all my friends were earning like 3 times what I was getting paid in the restaurant by working at the mushroom quarry or whatever they were doing, and they'd say, Angie, come on, look, you could get a Saturday job. We've all got a Saturday job. My dad would say, oh, no, it's family businesses. It'll all be yours when I'm gone. No, we all have to, plough in. It'll all be yours when I'm gone. So we worked from 8 years old. I mean, even Kathy was left babysitting us probably at that age. Anyway, so Mum sold the house in Bradford-on-Avon, gave the 6,000, which ended up in my dad's account. Then put in her inheritance from her mother to the farm, put in her inheritance from her godmother to the farm, or Sharon's place over the road. Sharon was supposed to be equally invested because the 2 young ones came home, but it became very clear that Anne-Marie was going to be the favoured one, and this is tied up with horses. Sharon is a superb horsewoman, as are 2 of my 3 children, Gabriella and Josh, and I'm a horse whisperer. But of the 5 daughters my dad got, the bravest one was Anne-Marie, because my dad would do things like put us as 13-year-olds on a 16-hand horse aimed at a 5-bar gate, and if we managed to clear it, he would raise. There was never enough. It's very Mengele type brutality, but like it was never enough, and he actually broke Sharon's spirit for horse riding. She was as gifted as Amory, but she was more sensitive, and he broke her spirit. So Sharon stuck to schooling. You know, I had a gift for horse whispering. My dad watched in amazement as I went and got Ollie, my stallion, out of a field with 8 mares in my slippers with just a rope. And I'm like, well, what's strange about that? This is my baby foal that I've raised. And the fact that he's not gelded yet and he's in a field full of mares is irrelevant to me. He knows me. And of course, if I put a little rope around his neck and talk to him, he's going to come with me. And my dad's like, how did you do that? How did you get a stallion, a young, ungelded, hot-blooded, half thoroughbred, part Arab horse? How did you just extract that horse from a field with 8+ mares, some in season? How did you, so, but he broke Sharon's spirit, and he spotted that Amory was the most malleable, the baby, and he selected her as the favourite. So Sharon, went back to England. She was just, she realised, no, it's never an equal playing field with our father. No matter who he promises what, he's promised it many times over. So Sharon went back to England. She did the dirt. She pretended to sell the bungalow that she built with my mother's help. My mother gave her the bridging loan until she could get a mortgage. Because like all of us, she'd married a no-good bastard. But, my father had gifted her the acre of land it's built on. But she pretended to sell it to Amory to get my parents out of the farm. And then she said, no, actually, I haven't sold it. My dad said, can I have the deeds then? And she said, no, you just live there till you die. Good for him to living to 95. And I pray that what the Holy Spirit whispered to me, that he would live to 97, comes true. It's karma. It's karma. So anyway, I wrote a poem, a haiku. Daddy always wanted a boy. They said third time lucky, but I wasn't. And the truth is, he had 5 daughters. And the minute my youngest had a son, who's now an international show jumping champion in America, my dad just poured all his vicarious dreams into him. Promised him 16 acres of the 65. I think my dad had already sold. He sold a 16-acre field to maybe the Foleys or the people that own the Dublin bar, Smiths. Anyway, he offloaded 16 acres right at the get-go to build an extension on the farm. But he poured everything into the first male grandson. And there were little deals, like, because my dad had no sons, he asked the daughters to put Power in the grandchildren's surname. So like Favoritism, Power Gallagher, and so on. Carry on the family name. And indeed, the firstborn grandson, the international show jumping champion, was called Power Gallagher, But he pretty soon dropped the Power name and is likely to stay in America the rest of his life. And as and when he inherits the farm, we'll probably just come home to sell it. So it's a curse. It's a curse. When my father is not in his evil mode, he used to walk myself, Kathy, Fiona. We'd come home to visit because we were grown. We were in our 20s by then, and Emery and Sharon were like 13 and 15 or something like that. But when we'd come on a visit, he would insist on walking the land with us. He would walk us around 16-acre fields at a time, all surrounded by stone walls, and say, this is, you can all have an acre, you can all build a house. I want all my grandchildren running around. This is my dream come true, you know. And even when he signed over Rainbow Farm, I remember he came to me. I was living in Kilnalek, renting on a farm, still married to the Disney with 4 horses. And he came to me and he said, look, Mum's not happy sharing the farm with Phil and Anne-Marie. I'm going to sign the farm over to Anne-Marie. I know that's not what I promised you all, but I give you 4 acres if you'll agree to it. You know, and he'd already given Sharon an acre, and Mum had already given her the bridging loan to build a bungalow, and Sharon had fucked off back to England. And so he said, Anne-Marie's going to buy Sharon's bungalow for me and Mammy, and I give you 4 acres. And if Kathy and Fiona ever want an acre, I make sure they can. Will you just roll over? And I said, well, Dad, having worked us like slaves from 8, you know, and said it would all be ours when you went, for you now to say Anne-Marie's going to get it all, Sharon's going to get kind of paid off, Kathy and Fiona are on the long finger because they'll never stand up for themselves, but you could be a prop manager, so I'll give you 4 acres. And like an idiot, I said, all right, go on then. And on the 4 acres, I applied for planning permission and I got turned down. Partly because of my family, but the planning department said you don't have enough roots in the community to get planning permission for a rural dwelling. I said, are you joking me? Like, my family's been there since 1981. Are you crazy? Like, this is on my family's land. And I appealed, but the only way I won was because I think it was Charlie Hobby had just built property or a house mansion on the Aran Islands with no family ties whatsoever, ever, to the Aran Islands, but just because he thought it'd be nice to build a property there. So I said to the planning department of Meath, you know, if Charlie Haughey, I think it was Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, can build on the Aran Islands with no family connection whatsoever, how dare you turn down my planning permission on my own family land, which has been in the family since 1981. This was about 1990 something, 98, I don't know, something like that. So on appeal, I won. And I designed my dream house. It was like a Spanish villa. It had stables, you know, the 4 acres of land. My ex-husband and I went and put post and rail fencing. It gave us 4 acres like in a slither, like a long, it didn't matter. I just thought that's all right. We can keep horses and raise our kids and be close to the family. But then when I left my marriage, oh yeah, I know. When my dad said, here's the deal, I'm going to give Anne-Marie the farm. She's going to pay Sharon for her bungalow, which me and Mum are going to move into. I'm giving you 4 acres, and Kathy and Fiona can have an acre to build on any time they want to come home. And Phil Gallagher stood in the farm and said to my dad in front of me, the apartment upstairs, Nico, is there for your daughters in England any time they want. They will always have a welcome at Rainbow Farm. Wow, was that a promise broken? So anyway, I got the planning permission. I didn't build within the 5 years because my marriage was breaking up. And I was stuck on a scripture that said, before you build a building, measure the cost, like make sure you've got enough to complete the project. And I knew already my marriage, well, it was cursed from the beginning, but I knew already it was in trouble. So I didn't build within the 5 years, how long your planning permission lasts. So my dad took advantage of that, and he told a lie to me, the county council. He said, she's gone back to America. And he said, my wife and I want to live in it with her plans. And, the bungalow we're in, it's not ours, it belongs to another daughter. And Meath County Council fell for it. And my dad had conned me. He'd come to, when I actually did have the courage to leave my marriage, and I got chucked to council house as compensation, he came to me and he said, give us a look at those plans you got for the house, Angie, just out of curiosity. I designed the whole, it was like, you get once in a lifetime chance to design your dream home. It's just beautiful. And stupidly, which I might be guilty of right now, which is trauma bonding, I thought, oh wow, it's going to build my house for me. And once it's up, I can get a mortgage, even though I've left my husband. And I'm in dire straits. 2 children with special needs, and a husband that's left with 100 grand of debt that is mine jointly because I was secretary to his company or whatever. But I thought, oh, isn't that lovely? So I gave him the plans, not knowing that he was going to go to Meath County Council and say, she's gone back to America and my wife and I want to move into the house, and she's given permission for us to use her plans. What a wicked, wicked guy. So the house got built. The builder gave my dad about 20 grand for the site and plans, which were mine. And then the builder even said to my dad, from now on, this builder was, it's only cost me 83 grand to build it according to those plans, Nick. Like, I don't mind waiting a year for you to pay me. Like, do you want to sell it and just, give me 100 grand or something? It sounds like he tried to be honourable. But my father was so delighted with the 12 or 20 grand he'd got, which he threw 2 grand at me, to move into a council house. He told the builder, no, you go ahead, I've signed it over. The builder made 150 grand clear profit in what year was it? 2000, maybe 2001, maybe 20 years ago. Like, literally, my father could have said, Angie, I've got a builder going to build according to your plans for 83,000. When the house is up, you'll have no problem getting a mortgage, even though you're a single parent now, or divorced, or whatever. Come and live the dream. No, this builder in Navan must have thought our family was crazy and ran away with 150 grand profit. So that's how my dream house is now occupied by strangers, which is a curse in the Bible. It says where strangers will reap the harvest of your labour, But as I say, it's going to end up like the field. There's 4 acres left that was meant to be for Kathy and Fiona to build on, because I already had my house and Sharon had hers, and Amory had the farm. But Amory tried to get my dad to sign that final 4 acres over to her son, her show jumping son, that will probably come home and sell everything and then return to America. But because she'd got a dementia diagnosis put on him, the solicitor said no go, can't get your father to sign that over. You've just had him diagnosed with dementia. So that's all that's left of 65 acres of dreams. And I think the best chance of breaking the ancestral curses on the land and the property is for each of the sisters to tell the truth and do the right thing. I'm not sure where I'll upload this, but I feel shame for going public with family dysfunction, and yet I have no support. This is what they do to whistleblowers, except or outside of my online support. So to those of you on Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, wherever, email, those of you that reach out and say, do not roll over again, thank you. God bless.